The people who choose to protect a child often become that child's true family. My name is Emily Carter, and on the morning I arrived at the Brooks estate, I expected to clean rooms, prepare breakfast, and quietly disappear into the background like every housekeeper before me. Instead, I walked into a mansion so beautiful that it almost felt frozen in time. Sunlight poured through towering windows onto polished marble floors. Fresh white lilies stood in crystal vases throughout the entrance hall. Every painting hung perfectly straight. Every piece of furniture seemed untouched. The house was flawless, yet it felt strangely empty. The silence echoed louder than footsteps. I was greeted by the estate manager before being shown through long hallways lined with family photographs. Nearly every picture included the same little boy with bright blue eyes, but in the newest photographs, his smile seemed to grow smaller with each passing year. His name was Noah Brooks. He was 8 years old. His father, Nathan Brooks, owned more businesses than I could remember, and everyone who worked in the house respected him with absolute discipline. When I first met him, he stood beside the library windows wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, reviewing documents while the morning light outlined his calm expression. He thanked me politely for accepting the position, explained the household routines with quiet confidence, and returned to work almost immediately. He was never unkind. He simply carried the weight of constant responsibility in every movement. A few minutes later I heard soft footsteps behind me. Noah stood in the hallway hugging a worn stuffed fox against his chest. He studied me carefully without saying a word. I smiled first. "Good morning. I am Emily." He nodded politely but remained silent. I noticed a paper airplane resting beside his shoe. I picked it up and unfolded one wing that had become bent before carefully shaping it again. Then I tossed it gently across the hallway. It floated through a beam of sunlight before landing softly on the polished floor. Noah watched it travel with quiet surprise. After several seconds, he walked over, picked it up, and threw it back toward me. It did not fly very far, but it was enough. We spent the next few minutes folding new paper airplanes from old newspaper pages while the enormous house slowly filled with something it had been missing. Laughter. It was soft at first, almost uncertain, but it was real. From the open library doors, Nathan looked up from his work. He did not interrupt us. He simply stood there watching his son laugh with a stranger for the first time in longer than either of us could have imagined. None of us realized that one simple paper airplane had already begun changing the future of everyone living beneath that roof. The days that followed settled into a quiet rhythm that surprised all of us. Every morning the mansion awakened to the aroma of fresh coffee, warm bread, and sunlight stretching across the marble floors. I learned where Noah liked to leave his books, which window filled his room with the brightest afternoon light, and how he always tucked his stuffed fox beneath his arm before bedtime. Small routines slowly replaced the silence that had once filled every hallway. Nathan remained devoted to his responsibilities, leaving early and returning long after sunset, yet something had begun to change even in him. Whenever he stepped through the front doors each evening, the first thing he asked was no longer about meetings or schedules. He asked how Noah had spent the day. One rainy afternoon, when thick clouds covered the sky and gentle drops tapped against the tall windows, Noah wandered into the kitchen while I was baking chocolate chip cookies. He climbed onto a stool beside the counter and watched quietly as I mixed the dough. "Can I help?" he asked. It was the longest sentence I had heard him speak since I arrived. I smiled and handed him a wooden spoon. Together we measured flour, counted chocolate chips, and laughed when a little flour landed on the tip of his nose. The warm scent of fresh cookies slowly filled the house, reaching rooms that had felt empty for far too long. When the first tray came out of the oven, Noah carefully arranged 3 cookies on a small white plate. "One for you," he said. "One for me. One for Dad." He carried the plate to the library and placed it on Nathan's desk just as another business call ended. Nathan looked from the cookies to his son with quiet surprise. "Did you make these?" he asked gently. Noah nodded proudly before pointing toward me. We made them together. Nathan picked up one cookie, smiled for the first time since I had met him, and thanked us both. It was a simple moment, but the warmth inside that room felt larger than the mansion itself. Later that evening, after Noah had fallen asleep, I walked through the hallway and noticed Nathan standing beside a family photograph. He spoke without turning around. "This house has not sounded like a home in a very long time." His voice remained calm, yet every word carried quiet gratitude. I did not know how to answer, so I simply smiled. Sometimes kindness did not require perfect words. Sometimes it only required staying long enough for hope to return. As I switched off the last light downstairs, I had the feeling that the happiest chapters of our story had not even begun yet. Several weeks passed, and the mansion no longer felt like a place built only from stone and polished wood. Every room carried small reminders that a child truly lived there. Paper airplanes rested on bookshelves. Crayon drawings decorated the refrigerator. Fresh flowers appeared in the dining room because Noah insisted every breakfast should begin with color. The quiet routines became traditions before any of us noticed. One bright Saturday morning, Nathan surprised Noah by canceling every meeting on his calendar. He announced that the entire day belonged to his son. Noah looked at him with wide eyes before turning toward me. "Can Emily come too?" he asked without hesitation. Nathan paused for only a moment before smiling. "I was hoping you would ask." We drove to a large botanical garden just outside the city where winding paths curved through colorful flower beds and peaceful ponds. The spring air smelled of fresh grass and blooming roses. Noah ran ahead with a paper airplane tucked into his jacket pocket, stopping every few minutes to admire butterflies dancing between bright blossoms. Nathan walked beside me at a slower pace, his hands resting comfortably in his pockets. "He laughs more now," he said quietly while watching his son chase sunlight across the garden. I had forgotten what his laughter sounded like. I looked toward Noah as he carefully helped a younger child retrieve a toy that had rolled beneath a bench. "Children remember kindness much longer than we realize," I answered. Nathan nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps adults should remember it longer too." Later that afternoon, we spread a blanket beneath a large oak tree and unpacked sandwiches, fruit, and homemade cookies. Noah pulled 3 blank sheets of paper from his backpack and handed one to each of us. "Everyone has to make one airplane," he declared with complete seriousness. We laughed together while folding the paper as carefully as possible. Mine flew in a gentle curve. Noah's landed near a patch of yellow flowers. Nathan's soared farther than either of ours before gliding gracefully across the open lawn. Noah clapped his hands with delight and ran to retrieve it. When he returned, he placed the airplane into his father's hand instead of keeping it for himself. "You should save this one," he said. "It reminds me that you stayed today." Nathan looked at the small paper airplane for several quiet seconds before carefully slipping it into the inside pocket of his jacket. As the golden afternoon sunlight filtered through the branches above us, I realized that the greatest memories were never built from extraordinary moments. They were created when someone simply chose to stay, and none of us knew that the promise we were quietly building together would soon be tested in a way none of us expected. The following Tuesday began like any other, with sunlight spilling across the grand staircase and the comforting aroma of fresh coffee drifting through the mansion. Noah insisted on carrying his newest paper airplane everywhere he went because he believed it brought good luck. Nathan smiled every time he saw it tucked safely into his son's pocket, even if he never admitted it aloud. After breakfast, the 3 of us prepared to visit a children's science museum across town, a trip Noah had been excited about for weeks. The city was unusually busy that afternoon, and families filled the sidewalks with laughter and conversation. Inside the museum, bright exhibits invited children to explore, build, and discover. Noah hurried from one display to another with endless curiosity while Nathan stayed close enough to watch every excited smile. I followed a few steps behind, quietly enjoying the happiness that had become so natural for him. As we approached a large interactive engineering exhibit, a heavy decorative display positioned above one section suddenly shifted after being accidentally bumped by another visitor. Before anyone fully understood what was happening, the structure began tipping toward the area where Noah stood examining a model bridge. Instinct moved faster than thought. I reached him first, gently pulling him backward and shielding him as the display came down beside us. The protective barriers absorbed most of the impact, and museum staff responded immediately, helping secure the area and guiding everyone to safety. Noah was frightened but completely unharmed. I had strained my shoulder during the sudden movement, and although the injury was not serious, the staff insisted that medical professionals examine me as a precaution. Throughout the entire ride to the nearby medical center, Nathan never once let go of Noah's hand. When the doctor confirmed that I would recover with rest and a simple sling for a few weeks, relief filled the room like fresh air after a storm. Noah walked over carrying the paper airplane that had remained safely in his pocket. He placed it gently into my hand and whispered, "You protected me." I smiled softly and brushed a loose strand of hair behind my ear. "Anyone who cares about you would have done the same." Nathan looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. It was not simply gratitude. It was the quiet realization that family is often defined not by the day people meet, but by the moment someone chooses another person's safety before their own. As the evening sunlight painted the hospital windows with warm shades of gold, I sensed that something inside Nathan had changed forever, even though neither of us was ready to speak those words aloud. The mansion felt different after we returned home. Nothing about the walls or the elegant rooms had changed, yet every corner seemed quieter, as though the house itself had paused to appreciate how close we had come to losing an ordinary afternoon. My shoulder healed exactly as the doctors had promised, but Nathan refused to let me lift anything heavier than a teacup. Every time I reached for a laundry basket or a stack of books, he somehow appeared beside me first. I teased him that I was recovering, not made of glass. He answered with a small smile that disappeared almost as quickly as it arrived. "Please let me have this," he said gently. "You have already done more for my family than anyone could ever ask." Noah took my recovery even more seriously. Every morning before school, he left a new drawing outside my bedroom door. One picture showed 3 paper airplanes flying above a bright blue sky. Another showed our picnic beneath the old oak tree. His favorite drawing showed the 3 of us standing in front of the mansion with the words, "Home feels happy now," carefully written in large uneven letters. I saved every single page inside a folder beside my bed. One quiet evening, after Noah had fallen asleep, Nathan invited me onto the back terrace overlooking the gardens. The fountains reflected the moonlight while a gentle breeze carried the scent of blooming roses across the stone pathways. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. The silence felt comfortable rather than awkward. Finally, Nathan reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and removed the same paper airplane Noah had given him weeks earlier. The edges had become slightly worn, but he had protected it with remarkable care. "I carry this every day," he admitted softly. "It reminds me that the most valuable things in life are often made from the simplest moments." I looked toward the peaceful gardens before answering. "Children understand that better than adults." Nathan nodded slowly. "Noah asked me something yesterday that I could not answer." I turned toward him. "What did he ask?" Nathan smiled with quiet emotion. "He wanted to know whether people can choose their family." More than once. My heart grew unexpectedly still. Before I could respond, Nathan continued in a calm voice. "I told him I believed they could." Neither of us said anything after that. We simply watched the moonlight shimmer across the fountains while the night wrapped the gardens in peaceful silence. Deep inside, I realized that the question Noah had asked his father was no longer meant only for a little boy searching for comfort. It had quietly become the question waiting for both of our hearts to answer. The following weekend, Nathan asked everyone who worked at the estate to gather in the sunlit garden behind the mansion for a simple afternoon luncheon. Long wooden tables were decorated with fresh white flowers, homemade desserts, and small glass lanterns that shimmered beneath the warm spring sky. At first, everyone believed it was simply a gesture of appreciation for another successful season, but I noticed something different the moment Nathan walked toward the center of the garden. Noah stood proudly beside him, holding the same worn paper airplane that had quietly become part of our lives. Nathan looked around at every employee before taking a slow breath. He had addressed boardrooms filled with powerful executives countless times, yet this moment seemed far more personal. Today is not about business, he began calmly. Today is about gratitude. The garden became completely silent. Nathan turned toward me, and for the first time since I had known him, he spoke without the careful distance he usually placed between himself and his emotions. When Emily entered this house, I believed I had hired someone to help manage a home. I was wrong. She brought laughter back into rooms that had forgotten what joy sounded like. She reminded my son that childhood could still be filled with wonder. She reminded me that being present is more valuable than being powerful. I felt my eyes fill with quiet emotion as every person standing nearby listened without interrupting. Nathan continued with the same steady voice. The afternoon at the museum changed more than one difficult moment. Emily placed Noah's safety ahead of her own without hesitation. I will spend the rest of my life remembering that kind of courage. Before I could respond, Noah walked over carrying a neatly folded drawing. He opened it carefully so everyone could see three people standing together beneath a large oak tree while colorful paper airplanes floated across the sky. Above the picture, he had written in careful block letters, "The family I chose." A gentle breeze moved through the garden as I looked from the drawing to Nathan and then back to Noah. No applause broke the silence. No dramatic speeches followed. Every person present understood that some moments deserved quiet respect instead of noise. Nathan stepped closer and spoke softly enough that only I could fully hear him. "Thank you for giving my son the happiest year of his life." I smiled through grateful tears before answering with complete honesty. "He gave me one too." As the afternoon sunlight settled across the gardens and children laughed somewhere beyond the blooming trees, I realized our story had quietly reached a place where gratitude had become something even deeper. Without anyone saying the words aloud, we had already begun living as the family Noah had drawn on a single sheet of paper. Summer arrived with long golden evenings that lingered over the gardens behind the mansion, and life settled into a peaceful rhythm none of us wanted to disturb. Noah finished another successful school year carrying not only excellent grades but also a confidence that had once seemed impossible. His teachers often spoke about how willingly he helped other children, and every time they asked what had changed, he answered with the same simple smile. "I learned that people stay when they really care." Those words remained in my heart long after he spoke them. One Saturday evening, Nathan invited Noah and me to visit the quiet lakeside where his late wife had once loved to watch the sunset. The water reflected shades of gold and soft orange while gentle waves brushed against the wooden dock. Noah skipped ahead carrying a small picnic basket, completely unaware that his father had planned something far more important than dinner. Nathan walked beside me in comfortable silence until we reached the end of the dock. He looked across the peaceful lake before taking a slow breath. "For a long time, I believed my life had already told its entire story," he said quietly. "I thought my responsibility was simply to protect Noah and keep moving forward." He turned toward me, his expression calm yet deeply sincere. "Then you walked through our front door carrying nothing more than kindness, patience, and a willingness to care for a little boy who desperately needed someone to believe in him." My eyes filled with emotion, but I remained silent, allowing his words to settle between us. Nathan reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and carefully removed a small velvet box. Instead of opening it immediately, he looked directly into my eyes. "This is not a promise built from gratitude," he continued. "It is not repayment for your courage or your kindness. I love you because you showed both my son and me what home truly feels like. I cannot imagine tomorrow without you standing beside us." He opened the box, revealing a graceful diamond ring that caught the last rays of the setting sun. Before I could answer, Noah quietly walked back toward us carrying 3 folded paper airplanes. He placed one into Nathan's hand, one into mine, and held the third against his own chest. With the innocent certainty only a child possesses, he smiled and said, "Now we can all fly together." Tears slipped gently down my cheeks as I nodded with a smile brighter than any words could express. "Yes," I whispered. "I would be honored." Nathan gently placed the ring on my finger while the evening breeze carried our paper airplanes across the shimmering lake. In that peaceful moment, I realized the strongest promises are never made because of one extraordinary day. They are built from hundreds of ordinary days spent choosing the same people again and again. Early autumn painted the gardens with warm shades of gold and amber by the time our wedding day arrived. Nathan had wanted to reserve one of the grandest venues in the city, but I quietly asked for something smaller, somewhere that already held the memories we loved most. So we chose the garden behind the mansion, the same place where paper airplanes had first become symbols of hope, where Noah had laughed without fear, and where our family had slowly discovered what home truly meant. White flowers lined the stone pathway, delicate lanterns swayed gently beneath the old oak trees, and soft piano music drifted through the crisp afternoon air. Friends, neighbors, and every employee from the estate gathered not as guests of a powerful businessman but as witnesses to a family built through kindness and trust. I stood at the end of the garden wearing a simple white gown that reflected everything I had hoped this day would become. There was no unnecessary luxury, only quiet beauty. Nathan waited beneath the large oak tree in a classic black tuxedo, his calm smile carrying more peace than I had ever seen in his eyes. Before I could begin walking toward him, Noah gently took my hand. He wore a navy blue suit with a small white flower pinned to his jacket and carried 3 carefully folded paper airplanes instead of a traditional ring pillow. Looking up at me with bright blue eyes, he whispered, "You never let go of me, so I am never letting go of you." My heart overflowed with emotion as we slowly walked together along the flower-lined path. When we reached Nathan, Noah placed one paper airplane into his father's hand, one into mine, and kept the third for himself. The officiant smiled warmly as the ceremony began beneath the golden afternoon sunlight. Nathan spoke his vows with quiet honesty, promising not perfection but presence, patience, and unwavering love through every ordinary day that life would bring. When it was my turn, I promised to protect the laughter we had rebuilt together and to always choose compassion before fear. Before the officiant could continue, Noah looked up with innocent excitement and softly asked, "May I say something too?" Everyone smiled as he stepped forward. "Today I am not losing anyone," he said proudly. "Today I am getting the family I wished for." There was not a dry eye anywhere in the garden. Nathan gently squeezed my hand before we exchanged rings, and at that very moment a gentle breeze lifted the 3 paper airplanes into the air. We watched them glide together above the gardens before disappearing into the bright autumn sky, and I knew those small paper wings carried every hope we had quietly built together into the beautiful future waiting just beyond that peaceful afternoon. 1 year passed with remarkable quiet, and the mansion that had once echoed with silence now awakened each morning with laughter, music, and the comforting sounds of ordinary family life. Sunlight still poured through the tall windows, but now it illuminated school projects spread across the dining table, fresh flowers arranged in every room, and paper airplanes resting on shelves beside treasured family photographs. Noah had grown taller, more confident, and endlessly curious about the world around him. Every evening he still insisted that the 3 of us share dinner together, no matter how busy the day had been. Nathan always arrived home before sunset whenever he could, because he had learned that the most valuable appointments in his calendar were the moments waiting around our family table. Inspired by everything we had experienced together, we quietly established a community program that offered educational activities, creative workshops, and family support for children who needed encouragement and stability. Every Saturday morning, families gathered in the same gardens where our own story had slowly unfolded. Children folded paper airplanes, painted colorful pictures, planted flowers, and discovered that kindness could become a tradition passed from one person to another. Noah proudly welcomed every new child with the same smile that had once been so difficult for him to find. Whenever someone felt shy or uncertain, he handed them a blank sheet of paper and gently said, "Everyone can make something beautiful." Watching him speak those words always reminded me how far our family had come. One warm spring afternoon, after another joyful gathering came to an end, Nathan joined me beneath the old oak tree where our wedding ceremony had taken place. He reached into his jacket pocket and unfolded the very first paper airplane Noah had ever given him. Time had softened its edges, but he had carefully protected it through every season. He smiled before placing it into Noah's hands. "I think it belongs to you now," he said quietly. Noah looked at the little airplane with thoughtful eyes before carefully smoothing one folded wing. "No," he answered with a gentle smile. "It belongs to all of us." He placed the paper airplane on the garden bench beside us, then reached for both of our hands exactly as he had done so many times before. We stood together beneath the branches while children laughed nearby and colorful paper airplanes drifted through the warm afternoon breeze. Looking at the family we had built, I finally understood that love is rarely created in one extraordinary moment. It is quietly shaped by countless ordinary choices to stay, to listen, to forgive, and to care. Sometimes the greatest homes are not the ones we inherit. They are the ones we build together, one small act of kindness, one hopeful smile, and one faithful heart at a time.